Welcome to Togethertec. We hang out on Fridays and talk about how we can save the world with technology in our projects. So, who wants to start? We can do what we normally do on Saturdays, just talk about our projects. Or I invited Raymond because we had talked, was it last week? So much happens from week to week. On having protocol.love, talking about having a funding model, something that can be made that is actually profitable so that you guys can make an income, right? Adriel and you and Matush. And that protocol.love was a good way to start with the foundational documents, but I don't know where that sits with the stuff for Salesforce and where any of that sits, and Adriel's not here yet. But
yeah, I think we could make good use of Ray's time and delve into the process and some initial ideas for those founding documents, even without the funding model, but how, just how do we want to organize as a group. So I think that's a great use of the time. I did want to kind of ask, we were talking in another meeting earlier today about several people have been talking about cooperation and consolidation between the projects and how to facilitate that even more. And I was thinking that is kind of what this meeting has been. So we could just try to move everyone into this meeting or have that run separately. I don't know, Jubilee, if you had a feeling for that.
yeah, I'm good. I'm good with that. I did catch part of your conversation with Adam. Adam is his name, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed like a cool project. Actually, Eureka got things sparking on me for my new idea. And I'm going to mute myself because there's beeping going on.
Hey, Daniel, thanks for joining.
Hi.
So I think if we want to just maybe if Ray could give us a feeling for how we would go about generating a cooperative organization, so that we can kind of work together in a more formal fashion than we have in the past, and if that's even warranted in this case.
I just want to honor also that when I invited Raymond, I was like, I think because I hadn't talked to you guys yet, that I was like, we'll do the foundational documents next week because he's coming to both. And so we've a little bit put him on the spot, but I think he's probably good with that based on who he is. But he might have the stuff ready to do foundational documents. And that's on me. That's on me.
Cool. Yeah. I could totally roll. And, it's always good to have just an initial meeting before we try to pretend we're going into a process. And honestly, the process itself is, something that's just a side effect of the proposed output, right? So protocol.love is just specifies if you want to operate with vulnerable transparency in the world, what are the things you would need to share? And so one of those things that seemed pretty obvious is your kind of foundational agreements as an organization. And so, I spent some time thinking, this was years ago now, of course, what is it that is fundamental to a foundational agreement that kind of every organization, every collective, no matter what kind of collective it is, what are the things that are in common that you would want to see, you would want to be able to see from an external standpoint to be able to have transparency into what it is they're doing.
I guess that wasn't me. So I lost you, Ray. Oh, okay.
Oh.
I think you're back.
Okay, so where did I cut off?
Trying to remember.
So
you were still on the intro.
Yeah. So protocol.love just proposes what it is you would record in what it is about any kind of collective foundational agreement where people come together with shared mission and purpose. What are the things that you would just always tend to want to know in order to be able to get it to grok what that organization is up to and how they're doing it, et cetera, from an external entity, what are the things you would want to know? And so protocol.love proposes what those things would be. And then out of, arriving at that output, I've fumbled my way through, holding space for groups to fill out a document together that arrives at that output ultimately. And so just to note, my specialty is not that group facilitation thing at all. I've been doing okay with it, but it's not really the important part of what I'm proposing. The important part is just, can we agree on the standard output of what we would want to know about organizations at their foundational stage? And so I can help you compile those things and write them down in this format, should it be something that resonates with you guys. And the idea obviously being that very soon here, perhaps by the end of the year even, we have the initial prototypes of the protocol.love browser, which would enable you to just go into all these various organizations in this ecosystem that are agreeing to the standard protocol, and you'd be able to see what they're up to, how they're doing it, who's doing it, what assets they're stewarding, how they're making decisions, what currencies they're working with, all these different types of things. And then ultimately, these things get recorded on the holochains, which is a completely fully distributed peer-to-peer distributed ledger technology. So the protocol.love browser would need to be pointed to some initial data for it to be able to tell you anything. Right? There is no central repository of anything in the holochain environment, so that's kind of one of the parts that's cool. So basically, though, the point here is if you guys want to get slightly more informally formal about your operations, definitely the outputs proposed by protocol.love, I would recommend, can definitely help you do that.
Excellent. And I was just pulling up, you have a document on, for those that are watching, cogov.tech/protocol.love, I assume is the right address. And I think if you do protocol.love, I think it comes up.
That's right, exactly.
So there's a lot of good information on there, and then there's also the collective foundational document template. So some of the things I assume we'll be going through is who's involved, what's the vision, the mission, currencies, which isn't exactly what it sounds like. It is, but it isn't. Assets, proposals, jurisdiction, accountabilities, operational notes, and invocation. Does that sound right?
Yeah. And so one of the really critical points of this methodology is to really establish as sovereign beings in full choice, coming together in free will, coming together and establishing this agreement, creating a sovereign entity. And so I think one of the critical pieces of this is to truly embody the sovereignty of each being and the sovereignty of the organization first. From that standpoint, saying we recognize, and that there's a very common pattern in the world, that there will be what we call jurisdictional assertions from various entities at some point down the road. Things like the IRS or other entities like that sometimes want to know and assert that they have some jurisdiction over what you're doing. And in order to prepare most dynamically for such an event, you can agree ahead, to do some of that jurisdictional binding at some point after the sovereign beings have come together and in a divine dance of beautiful collaboration created this initial foundation agreement, collective foundational agreement that creates a sovereign collective between you. And then from that place, as a sovereign collective, agree to perhaps enter into a jurisdictional framework that for kind of things like this. Usually it's some form of dispute resolution that forces that kind of thing to be chosen. So get clear about that, whether that be the U.S. government, whether that be a different like recognized federal government, or whether that be or one of these dynamic crypto based DAO spaces, of which there are multiple kind of new forms of jurisdictional negotiating, things like that. So.
Does anyone have any questions? And also, we kind of started this discussion between Daniel and Matush came in, so I want to make sure that they have an opportunity. If there are any topics you want to discuss in this time, we can deviate from what we've kind of started. And Adriel came in.
No need to deviate. Mostly just listening, learning. I might end up with some questions, but I don't need to change topic.
Cool. Okay.
I think Matush is having some technical difficulties as he has popped in and out. So I don't know if we want to wait for him to be able to answer.
He can interrupt us.
Yeah, so we just continue on.
Yeah.
And Matush, feel free to jump in if your tech allows.
Yes, I don't have any immediate questions. I, I think it'd be interesting to kind of step to how we normally do the facilitations, and just kind of see where it goes. We may not have much more to talk about before we do that.
Yeah, potentially. If it's a go, then yeah, I recommend uh, planning for this to be an 8 hour process. But hopefully we can do it quicker. The more hip to game B everybody is, the easier it is usually. So we might be able to fly right through it with a group like this.
And would it be okay to do 8 separate hours, or does it matter? Is it okay? That might be
Yeah.
good to give people time to digest between meetings too.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I wouldn't try to do it in one session. Usually it's more like 4 2 hour sessions, but it's not super critical. Um, just by the time one of the things that feels important is to really create space. Checking in, doing some stuff to really get us into the space and into connection with each other. And so by the time you do that, you can take 15-20 minutes sometimes. So sometimes 2 hours is better than 1 hour, but we can make it work with an hour for sure.
And is there anything we should prep or bring before we start that sort of thing?
Well, if you guys have done written down anything along lines of mission, vision, things like that, absolutely come with a document filled out. In fact, I'll send you a document of recommended steps here that we're kind of moving through as we speak. One of those being one or more parties that has, kind of seems to be holding more of the clarity on what's happening with this group. Go ahead and just take a stab, make a copy of the collective foundational agreement template and fill that stuff in, and then get the rest of the team say, "Hey, is this close enough? Do you want to get started and help get together and fill out the rest of this document together?" Kind of thing. If you're pretty clear on your group already, then that's not quite as relevant. But I'm going to send the document just so you have it.
Great. I guess one of the first things we might need to discuss is we've talked about forming several groups, and so we need to decide which, if all, or what combination of those groups this initiative will be. So there was the original Togethertec, and then Adriel was talking about starting up something to start. The first couple steps would be like Salesforce, some Game A stuff done in a Game B way to generate money for Game B projects, and then of course that under that umbrella would be kind of some of the Game B projects. And then also I've been talking to Adam, who is he's starting a non-profit. Like I think he's already started the paperwork. Um, but he's also very interested in combining projects and stuff. So um, I don't think it'd hurt, or maybe we'll also figure that out as we go through. But also just kind of filling in this template with our ideas. I think that there'd be huge overlap between these initiatives, and they may be all the same initiative. Anyone have any opinions on that?
No, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that I kind of had I guess, a personal goal for Togethertec, which might fit into this, is for Togethertec to sort of offer like unofficial certifications for businesses to sort of participate in, to say like, hey, here's a checklist of what the initial group decided on, and then what the community has sort of helped evolve over time. To say, for example, like just what does it mean to be, I would probably shy away from using the term Game B just because it's so open, but some sort of term where it's a Game B-ish type company, right? Like what sort of things, and then if you're a tech company, what does that mean? If you're a manufacturing, or if you do food, or have sort of different lines for each one, where you can just say, yeah, I'm willing to do those things, and then sort of have a certification that theoretically this could be something that this for-profit, but in a Game B way for Game B projects type thing, that could be a company that like is using one of these certifications, or I think to Bentley's point, it could just be part of the same group. I'd be interested to.
So to mention in the private chat is the StreamYard doesn't do link, so you have to like copy and paste it in order to find it. I can't copy and paste at the moment, but if somebody, probably Adriel, want to put it up and then share your screen,
I got
so
it up
that'll
so
be
I can
that.
share.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a neat idea, Adriel, that you're talking about. And I've actually found that just merely by like the choice to embody vulnerable transparency is almost kind of the meta thing that I notice puts people in a game B state, right? And so, almost by the mere act of going through this collective foundational agreement and intention to operate with vulnerable transparency, you're almost kind of like off to a really great start at game B principles just merely from that act.
Right. In previous times that you've done this with organizations, how much is it like front and center, almost like as a part of their branding or their positioning, where like if I were a consumer going to a company that was doing, this transparency and sort of following these guides, how much is it, as a consumer, I go to that website and it's sort of front and center and saying, hey, here's why you can trust us, versus you would sort of have to dig in and like want to go and look at, for example, the streamed board meetings, or if they choose to do that, you would have to go look for it, versus how much is it like a key part of what differentiates that company or that brand from their competitors or their alternatives.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you kind of named the thing that is the key, which is so lots of organizations claim to be operating with full transparency, right? And there's various standards of that in the world, but the bottom line is there's no one way to go about being transparent, and so if you wanted to take an ecosystem of a group of companies or something and do an analysis of how they're operating based on the fact that they claim to be transparent, for each company, you generally have to go in and figure out how they're being transparent and discover their transparency methodology. So the object of protocol.love is exactly to propose the standards for how to be transparent with a digital protocol backed in, stored on distributed hash tables, so that we can, again, have this protocol.love browser thing that goes in and can look at all that standard data in the standard format and present it in a really beautiful user interface. So ultimately, we have something like companies doing this right on your web page. Like the recommendation would be like, let's put a button that says we operate with vulnerable transparency using protocol.love. Click here to see the details. You click and you're straight into their collective foundational agreement. You can start looking at their economics ledger, their governance ledgers, all that stuff is going to be right there at a fingertip. Who they're doing business with. If they're doing business with another organization that uses protocol.love, bam, you're right into browsing that organization. You're doing things like clicking on individuals within any given collective and seeing what other collectives they're a part of. You're looking at agreements between organizations. You're looking at economic flow between organizations. All of these things, in theory, are going to be readily available like 12 months from now. The groups I've been doing this with, is probably 10 or 15 I've done it with, of which 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 maybe even are actively like functional and moving things forward, and the mere knowledge that they have used protocol.love together instantly creates a bond, and instantly creates an openness to working together more. So that's been inherent.
So you were saying we should probably fill out this agreement document some prior to the meeting, or do you facilitate through that?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, you were bringing up the major question there of like, what is this group's purpose? Like, there's lots of different ones we could address with like the same 5 people that are here. You all could be a discussion about forming several different organizations with several different missions, it sounds like. So the goal would be for like one of you to get real clear on what we're stepping into. So take your best shot at filling out a mission and vision just on your own, and then invite the others. Say, hey, do you want to go through an up to 8-hour process to help me complete this document, generally around this mission and vision? Of course, we'll all fine tune that mission and vision together, but do that fine tuning and then complete the rest of the document, and invite who you would like to invite to do that. Is generally the most clear and direct way to get the ball rolling, I've found.
Yeah, and even we could, a couple people could take a crack at it if they want to.
Yeah, totally. And so, hey, I this is kind of the mission and vision I see for us. Do you want to work on that? Well, here's what I see for us. Do you want to work on that? yeah, we'll both work on each other's. Which do you want to do first? And so like we have that decided by next week when we come, something like that.
Is there anyone else that we would want to make sure is participating? And maybe it's a good idea to get a feel for who wants to participate at what level. Like Daniel might just be a witness, unless you're more inspired to become a. I guess right now there's witnesses, signatories, are the kind of two different levels.
Yeah, generally what I set the expectation for, or like to have happen, is that who's the CFD council, you are all committed to showing up for the full amount of the process, which is up to 8 hours. So be there for the full 8 hours. And if one of you can't be there, then we just reschedule. Like it's that level of commitment to making sure everybody is fully present for every moment of that. And then people who don't want to make that commitment or aren't as engaged at that level, then yeah, they can be more of a witness and kind of come and go more organically. And we won't reschedule if they can't be there, kind of thing.
So who all wants to commit to that 8 hour thing? Adriel, I assume.
Yeah, sure. And so we're framing this as this is mainly for Togethertec, or are we still trying to feel out for like which organizations are involved?
I think Jubilee agreed that we could abscond with her name, Togethertec, and build Salesforce stuff with it. So, and her concept building on it's building on what she is. So, and then I would think we would absorb any Game B-ish projects that are willing to be. That's my thought, if anyone disagrees.
Right, okay. Yeah, I think if we're going with the Togethertec name and sort of saying like that is both an organization that can actually own technology, like as an organization, and then also kind of offer different levels of certifications or insight, right? Or saying like, here's sort of what our community has said these projects, would hopefully do. And I mean, it sounds like maybe that's what Protocol Love is already doing, so maybe we would need to do that.
Well, I mean, it isn't a set out goal, but I'm just saying it's organically happening merely by the fact that you agree, that you notice you're agreeing to this standard, and now other organizations are agreeing to the standard. You're inherently creating a network,
right?
That you can't help it, right? It's just
right. Yeah. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah. So then I think it sounds like we might still want to offer that kind of certifications where it's more for the consumer-facing ones, where it's like, hey, any company that says that they're offering this, Togethertec tech company certification agrees to do these things, and some of it will definitely end up being transparency, and then it may also be forms of profit sharing or whatever that ends up being.
I have a suggestion that we do it with Togethertec, because I feel like that will be the one we've been working with the longest, and it'll be the most real to create foundational documents for. And then through that, you guys can figure out the Salesforce app that you're making that's part of Togethertec, but your guys' right? Like you guys are the ones on it. That is also like under the umbrella of Togethertec, but also not. And so I think it's powerful to have Togethertec's foundational documents. And then like, ooh, how does this work? Who owns it? How do we profit share? What does this look like amongst each other? But you've already worked on the one with Togethertec that has less Game A in it, right? Like I think it'll be less messy to do that.
Right.
But you guys are the ones with that one. So does that sound like did that make sense? Or would you rather, because I'm also down doing it the opposite, where we, work through them on the Salesforce app and then.
Sounds interesting. In that model, what would Togethertec be doing? Like what's the, if we stick with it for a year or two and we're doing stuff and putting effort into it, what is it doing in your mind?
And that's so Togethertec is still being Togethertec. We're still having our board meetings to, figure out how do we have a project of projects? How do we have the round table to support our projects? But one of those projects is making sure you guys are paid, right? Making sure that you have this for-profit thing. And like I said, figuring that out, because it is slightly more messy with money and less nebulous, right? It's a real thing you guys are making to sell. Right. Versus Togethertec, which is like, hey, we all have projects and we don't want to let them go, but we want to create Game B together. nebulous, beautiful game B-ness, but like also let's create foundational documents so it's a little less nebulous. And so I guess from the people working on the app, does it feel right to create foundational documents for the Salesforce app or for Togethertec?
I think the Salesforce apps are just a means to an end, so I think putting it all under Togethertec's a pretty good idea. And just know that that'll be one of the first kind of combined projects that will be funding the other projects.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, to me, the Salesforce app is more like, just an idea for, oh, everyone's gone, for like how to sort of start going down that, what do we do if we have ideas that could make money, but we don't necessarily want to, have that be the emphasis. Where does that fit into the flow? As opposed, like, so in theory, I would want that same company, 2 years down the road, if things are successful, for there to be other stuff as well, right? Like consumer facing, possibly video games, like who knows what, where the end goal is just that's the umbrella that these various tech projects can be under, where ideally most of the profit should be going into either Togethertec or something like Togethertec, where it ends up being paid out to the various projects that aren't for profit, but that need money to run and are important.
And I think that is so you guys are going to come to your own agreement, being the people working on that app, as to how much you want to share with Togethertec, right? If
Right.
Togethertec's involved, and you know what I mean, I guess me being the Togethertec is involved, then it becomes a, oh wait, no, what you're going to keep, how much? No, it's that is part of what Togethertec is doing, is figuring out how do you deal with this game A stuff in game B, right? And so figuring out, okay, well, here's how much time we're putting in. How are you sharing it amongst yourselves, and how are you sharing it with the greater group is part of what you're doing, right? Without Togethertec being the ones to say what that is.
I see. So it sounds a bit like Togethertec sort of offers multiple layers of involvement. Like, Togethertec as a group will sort of come out with, whether they're certifications or just like, hey, here's what this group said was, would be cool as a consumer if you just want to use it for that, but then it might also actually end up owning projects.
Yeah,
and
but I think that'll be part of the process, is do you guys want Togethertec to own it? All of it, some of it, none of it, right? That's part of it, just like it is for
Right.
WikiLection and solution raising and everything else. But this one is different because you guys are working together from the beginning, right? It's not Matoush working on WikiLection for you. It's like, hey, how does this work? And then who's put in, like, you guys will have to figure that out. And that is an important process that other things under the umbrella of Togethertec will have to do when they're starting from scratch and when they're doing that stuff. Or does Matoush own part of WikiLection? You know what I mean? Like, all of that stuff is part of it. And so that might be where we want to start the foundational document. And Raymond and I, for part of it, will be less, Raymond's, I don't think, emotionally involved in either of them, right? Like, it's like Togethertec and this, he's helping with that process. And it'll be the same for me on the Salesforce, but with Togethertec, it might be a little more in it, right? Which is, I'm good either way.
Right. Okay. I kind of like what you were saying, where so Togethertec sort of is that group of people who it might end up owning projects. It might just end up sort of being like a thought leadership type component, and then the Salesforce app would just work on that, and then we can decide as we go, like, to what extent Togethertec is involved. Is it just a regular corporation that pays some of the profit to Togethertec? Does Togethertec end up owning it? We can sort of figure that out as we're actually building it.
And I think it'd be really interesting to do what you guys think that's going to look like before you really start and put in time and effort, right? Oh, 90% is going to Togethertec, and then owning that is absolutely going to change. And then at the end, right, you're like, actually 100% we're a game A now. We sold it for $1 billion. Oh, excellent. But
Nice
like, that's
Bentley.
part of it, right? See, Bentley's doing it. Seeing that process, right? Of like, hey, what does this look like? How do you get ego and money and all of that stuff in the game B world?
Yep, well, I'll have to start growing on our mustaches.
Yeah, right. A little bit longer so I can
Have some money set aside for mustache wax.
You guys all do have facial hair. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Everyone except for me.
It's a 2010s, 2020 thing.
Fair enough.
I don't want to say anything incorrect, but just from my observations, it appears like Togethertec is already doing a huge amount of this radical transparency stuff. Just the fact that you make so many of these meetings essentially publicly available, it appears from my perspective and my small participation so far, that you're kind of already doing it. And it sounds like the problem is you don't know. Like, I kind of came here today with like a new project that I wanted to talk about, and it doesn't have to be talked about now. It would be a total Game B project that I want to be transparent and open, and just want to get that conversation going. It sounds like part of the problem is you are unsure what projects Togethertec should work on that are, total, complete Game B, open source, super transparent projects. And can you also take on projects that are more private, that are more money generating? Like, you don't know, can you do both? It appears like, why not just do both? And you'd have to figure out time management and resource management. What do we do first? What do we work on first? And that would be difficult. Or do you say Togethertec is only these Game B type projects, and sorry, if your project isn't in that scope, we can kind of guide you in a different entity. That appears like what the problem is. And tell me if I'm wrong, but that's just my observation. I would say do both, but that's, without going into the minutia of the details. Like, do everything.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, and I think I'm comfortable, and so we'll see if anyone disagrees, just calling it Togethertec, knowing Togethertec will have different projects that are on the scale between Game A and Game B. And hopefully the Game A, the things close to the Game A will be funding the things closer to the Game B. And we're all happy family, and Jubilee can debate with us during the, can be heavily involved, as opposed to focusing just on the kind of the Salesforce idea. Because I really see that's really at the experimental level. Like, we're going to build a few plugins. If they make money, then we'll fund Game B stuff with it. If they don't,
it sounds like part of, I'm looking at the Protocol Love website. This is really cool. It sounds like part of the vulnerable transparency part is being transparent about that division anyways, and saying we're really transparent that this is actually kind of there's a money making. I mean, any successful project is still serving people really well, but being transparent about what the different projects are.
Yeah, I was just thinking about transparency because I hadn't really thought about it in a while. So if we're doing the Salesforce plugins, we probably wouldn't want that to be open source, but you could make them open source. Depending on what they are, because sometimes they need a service backend, and that's really what the service you're providing. But other times, if you make it too easy and anyone can just copy it and then put their own thing, that would limit the Game A effectiveness.
Yeah. I think a lot of the apps I have in mind would run natively in Salesforce, so you wouldn't have to worry about hosting. You just install it into your Salesforce, and then it's running on their servers.
Yeah, that makes the code have to be private.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
part of what Togethertec did for me was to even help me figure that out. My social media project, I came into this space talking about it, and Togethertec kind of helped me figure out is this going to be an open source thing, or is this going to be more of a private project? And Togethertec helped me figure out on that social media project what I should do by asking me the questions I didn't even know I had to ask. And I've done a lot of work with that. I've got a totally different project that, from what I can tell, would benefit from the open source, the non-private sort of thing. And that's going to be, the next thing I want to talk about. But Togethertec helped me even figure that out. I didn't even know I was going to need to confront those questions.
That's interesting. So it sounds a bit like what we sort of said in various ways, where Togethertec is, either like almost like an alliance of projects and may eventually own projects. All the projects that we've touched so far are the sort of game B, not really, like in a lot of cases, not profitable at all, or at the very least, not profit seeking. Now we're kind of just talking about a new type where it's like, okay, if you have a profit seeking project, what does that look like, and
how
can
does
that fit?
Togethertec handle that?
I just want to, sorry, I keep seeing Raymond mute and unmute. I want to give him a chance to speak, and then Matushal, so if he has any thoughts on what's going on.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, of course, that I think you guys got the gist. That protocol.love, and it doesn't suggest vulnerable transparency means all of your code is open source, but it does suggest that you're vulnerably transparent about the fact that you made the decision to close your source or open your source or whatever. That's it. And it sounds like you guys are off and running with the important part of the discussion here. In terms of what organization do you want to informally formalize first, and who's going to be part of that. And so if I'm correct, I can leave you to that. Know that I'm definitely available, and if you want me to leave this hour in for next week, I'm glad to do that, and maybe we'll start on something then, or maybe we'll just have more of these discussions. Either way, I'm good.
Okay, I think it does sound like we need to iron things out a bit before we start to spend your time on this, because
it sounds like maybe next week isn't the best time. We'll be doing this and doing mission and vision, and then I'll contact you for when it's more appropriate for you to.
Okay, awesome.
You're welcome to come join at any point, because we're open.
Cool. Yeah, maybe I will. I mean, I'm curious to learn more. Of course, my favorite way to learn all about the projects people are doing is by helping them do their collective foundational agreement. So that's always the best use of my time too. It's dual purpose. I get to teach and share these ideas and get feedback, and then I also get to learn about all these awesome projects, because the more they're interested in vulnerable transparency, the more awesome they tend to be. So that's just the way that goes. But yeah, let me know. It says right on the document what to do, like make a copy, fill out the mission and vision, enroll 3 to 8 people total, and then get in touch with a consultant. That would be me, and we'll schedule the time. So we could just do it that way.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray.
thank you.
All right, you guys. So good to see most of you again and meet some new people. Look forward to weaving some more. Bye for now.
Bye.
All right. I don't know if you can mute and unmute, or did I? Okay.
No, that was me. Yeah. So I guess I think it would be good to reserve a little time to hear Daniel's idea. So maybe the suggestion is whoever is willing, take a copy of this document, and I'll take it, kind of go through and noodle around some vision and mission and currencies for that idea, and then come together next week and kind of talk through each section and what our ideas are, and see if we can come to a consensus, or if we make 10 companies.
Yeah, sounds good. I think one of the things we had talked about months ago was actually each doing a mission and vision for Togethertec, and then coming together and being like, hey, how much do they overlap? Are we all doing the same thing here? And that might be an important thing to do over the next week. Anyone like to do your own vision and mission, and then we'll see where they overlap. And we can put them on the document.
Yeah.
Would be funny if each and every document was totally different.
That is probably what will happen.
Beautifully so.
Yeah. Hopefully they're different in ways that at least, sort of jive.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what.
Creative ways, yes.
The social media project, folks, help me get the ball rolling on that. So I've submitted a proposal to a university, and I'll find out in the next week, probably, about the next week, whether that gets accepted, and they're going to work on it. And that'll only be some kind of MVP. It will be very basic. It will be spaghetti code. It's possible that route to get something started and off the ground is good. And then, the idea for that is it should serve people really well. Togethertec could own that as an asset in the future. It's supposed to take a whole year for them to build it. And it's possible that, yeah, as more of a private thing, but Togethertec could take it from there. And that would be cool to have that conversation. It could be good. So that's the social media project. And then quickly, yeah, since I got a whole bunch of stuff done with that, I mean, the next thing is kind of the dream to have some kind of tool library app that facilitates borrowing and lending of tools and assets, books, etc. Between folks. It'd be kind of like a mashup between Google Docs and Craigslist.
I think that exists, just like many of the other amazing ideas, several times over. Just like the product idea with the UPC and like how that there are a few places. I know it's kind of not that great, but there's like a Facebook type social media for your neighborhood called Nextdoor. And they have a part in there of sharing. And there's a few apps that I think there's been a few out of Groundswell in Vancouver that have come out with that. And so just starting with what's out there, and if they've went wrong, where did they go wrong, right?
Yeah, I've done a bit of that. Every time I look into what already exists, I find, because I only do that once every 4 or 5 months, like scrape again what already exists. And so I'd have to do that one more time. They're all missing like a particular piece of the puzzle. And some of them, almost all of them, are too open, I think, for it to work. Like I can post my circular saw on what do you call it now? It's Neighbor Goods is one of them. Nextdoor
is one of them, yeah.
But it means more people can see it than I care to. I need fine-tuned control. It's like it's all or nothing. This is the problem I see with most of these. Because when I get into really expensive goods, maybe some things I'm like, okay, I don't care. My whole block can see that I have this particular tool or this particular book I can share. But I might have other things that I want more of like a Google Doc thing where I can say, this is public. Anyone with the link can see it. But I want other things that only individuals that I know really well can even know that I have this thing. And that's where we need to go with it from my point of view. Because the really expensive stuff, I can't just put out there publicly. It doesn't feel safe.
And so the question is...
So this is for resource sharing and not selling.
Resource sharing. A really expensive high-end app would also have a button that's like, hey, you can borrow this. I want 3 levels: borrow, give away, or sell. Because some things I might say, you can borrow this, and actually I don't even need it back. That would be
rent. Is there a rental option? Just throwing a fourth one up there because there's like wear and tear on it, right? Of like, hey, it's $2 to borrow it, or you have to have the skill level. And I think that this is the danger of what every tech project goes through, is these things already exist. And if you're solving it for you, right, because these ones don't meet your needs, you're solving this because you want to be able to have those levels. It's going to be missing 2 or 3 key things that you don't need that they have, or that someone else is like, oh, but it still doesn't meet this. Like that's where creating technology together, so you have thousands of people's input of like, wait, have you used the online tool libraries? Why did they work? Why didn't they work? And even just putting that out to Game B might be enough, right? For people that guaranteed some of them know the people who've created those apps, and either they're still going or they're not, and why they went wrong and why that was there. But like caution solving the problem for you instead of finding the what everyone needs and then what's the most important part, and then being able to improve it together. Otherwise, everyone's got a social media platform. Everyone has and we need them. We need one to be the thing we all use, so that like everyone's tools is on one, and we need it to have those key features, right? That like you can control what you give to who? Are you skilled in it? Do I know you? It's my really expensive pressure washer, right? That
Yeah, if there was a way to, you know, and I need help and I need to work together. If there was a way to contact the creator of one of those apps and be like, hey, I need an extra level of control. Can you add that? Is that possible? I don't know how to do that stuff.
Yeah.
Would they listen to me? I don't know.
So yeah, like Jubilee was saying, I think the next steps would be to redo your research and maybe even put that in some sort of spreadsheet or something. So we all kind of look at it. And then, yeah, for each of the things we would, the options are contact the existing creators, maybe even look at the old stuff that went debunked. Now, I think in this space, there's a huge benefit for game B over game A because they have to make a profit on something like this, and the profit margin's too low. But if you're just working about creating a commons area, then it's a completely different financial basis, and thus you don't have to say, oh, exit for $1 billion in 5 years. A lot of times, if investors invest a lot of money, even though it's a profitable company, they will shut it down if the profit isn't too high because they want to move all those great team members to companies that could make the $1 billion. And so there's a lot of great ideas that just don't have the profit level to make it in the Silicon Valley ecosystem. It would, and a lot of those ideas would have been great for bootstrap products, but no one's kind of done it because they see the Silicon Valley fail and they're like, well, if they couldn't do it with their millions of investments, and they don't realize it's just an economic thing. So yeah, this is a good area that game B has an advantage over game A.
And you're so right, because one of the last times I did a deep dive and found the 10 different apps that have tried to solve this problem, it was like half of them still had a website up, but the app, obviously it was an effort, went on, and then they couldn't keep it going, and the app didn't exist, and it used to, and stuff like that, because it is hard to keep it going for whatever reason that I
one
don't.
of the other features that is like, if I want a circular saw and there isn't one, that I might be willing to go out and buy one so I can put it on there, but to see what the need is, because I might not do that if I can't rent it out. But if I could rent it out for $2 per time, then I know the wear and tear is covered. I know that's covered, and I'll go get it on my own. There's also, tool libraries in nearly every major city, and working with them to actually show what would help them get the word out to people. And I know the Vancouver Tool Library has a fee per, there's a reason I don't use it because I'd rather use my neighbors, right? I'd rather go and get the thing so I can go return it. But there's a way that they're not for profit. So finding a way to facilitate their mission while also including the other stuff, because then you already know there's a circular saw. You just might have to go to the tool library to pick it up. And creating the, or, hey, your neighbor has it, right? There's already the threshold of users on it for tools, and then of course people wanting them, you need the tools to get the people. You need the people to get the tools. Yeah. Starting with the tool libraries might be a way to.
And that's and the maker spaces. What software are they using to do their internal, not just sharing, but also time scheduling? Because the scheduling, it's a large printer. So see what, and some of that, because it's maker spaces, there might be existing open source software that could be just adapted. So that's something to think about. So it's really just a lot of research, and then if we find out that there is still this kind of gap, then I would say the next step would be writing up a one-pager, and or either doing what Jubilee suggested, where you just kind of ask, hey, do you have this problem, and if you tried some stuff in the past and what has happened, and then after that it would be just a little one-pager that says, here's our idea, here's what differentiates it from what exists out there. Do you want to participate? And I would actually say, even before you write any code or adapt any open source code, is you go on Substack and make an email list and put up a landing page somewhere and start sharing it around, and say, when we get 1,000 people to sign up for this email list, we'll be serious about it. Is kind of the way to make sure that there's a level of interest before we put in the effort.
That's helpful.
I might be able to put you in contact. I think it's one of several people have had that idea going through Groundswell, which is the hippie business school I went to a few years ago. And so some of them, even if it never went off the ground, right, might have done some of that research and some of that work, or they might have had successful ones and then they stopped being successful, right? So and they might not have been successful because there's a tool library in Vancouver. I don't know, but I can ask and see if they have someone for me to put you in contact with. And I bet you the Game B space also has people who either are directly involved in one of these projects in the past, currently directly involved, or know someone who's directly involved.
Sounds like I have to do some documentation, research and documentation.
Yeah, that's probably the next step. And I've been thinking I need to sit down. I'm going to write a blog post with, this is kind of like the flow process. Do that research, do, some posts on social media. How do you kind of organize that, differentiators, and then how to do a survey or a email sign up list, and because that's pretty consistent for all these projects. And I should do that for my projects, but since it's so easy to write code, I get stuck. It's like, oh, I want to play, so I write code before it's time. Done that so many times.
Yeah.
So you don't have that problem.
I have the opposite problem, right? Well, yeah. And the scheduling part, that might be a makerspace thing, because there was another app I found. I can't remember because last time I dove into this was like 9 months or more ago. There was one that had a lot of potential, but it had no scheduling, had no way to, when my neighbor, does pick up whatever item, it should automatically let us say, okay, I'm lending this to you for 3 weeks. And then it should like push us notifications. Hey, tell them, hey, you've had such and such tool, reminder, this is due back in 3 days or something. And then it should let me have a button when I get the reminder on my end. It should let him or her say request to extend. And then I can like accept or request the extension or something.
Yeah, and I have a hammer drill from someone sitting underneath my desk right at the moment.
Yeah, and years ago, some software folks told me like, that sounds great. And that's not easy to do. And maybe you know more about that, but they said, yeah, what you're talking about, it's possible. That's complicated. Doing calendar requests to be able to extend it and all of that. It's like that's not easy, is what I was told. And hey, that's okay.
It's got a level of complexity, but I don't think it's not like unexplored territory. But you do have to have a server that can run things without being initiated by a person. So you need what they call cron jobs, code that runs at a certain period of time. But there are definitely solutions for that. So I don't think that's too hard, but it does take work.
I think is also not that Daniel or any of us need to solve this by ourselves, because I'm already trying, but like having a foundation of people to ask these questions of and say, okay, here's everything a tool app can do. What's your priority? What's the priority for most people? And then the beta is never going to be something that works for everyone. But the more people are invested in the beta, the more they're willing to use it, even though it's subpar, and give feedback of what they want the next thing to be, right? Like, okay, we know we didn't do the scheduler because it was too hard, but we really do need it for the next one. Or I'm not letting people use my circular saw. I want to be able to rate customers because this person breaks things and this person doesn't, right? That there becomes an obvious way to, that was part of the vision of Togethertec, is all the tech projects have the same problems, the same ideas come up. Then there's not the threshold of users. And because we don't own any of them, we don't have a say in how they get improved. We don't have a say in the features and benefits they have. So the next person's like, oh, you're broken. They can create a competitor, even if it's in the not-for-profit space and the space that is Game B, and finding a way to deal with that on a meta level, right? Where it's being dealt with for all tech projects. And whenever anyone has a question, even if you don't own that community, to be able to ask them and be able to have them have a say in it. And then if you're not willing to figure out what the beta is, and if you're not willing to work with the community to make the next one, then they wouldn't work. You know what I mean? Then they would make up their own competitor.
Yeah.
Be like, well, we'll make our own then.
Yeah, and I don't have time, but it'd be nice to have a little app to where you could go in and just say, here's my idea, here are the feature lists, and you could just share the link and people could prioritize and maybe even allow them to add new feature ideas and prioritize it as a group.
Yeah.
Also, you possibly doing Bentley, get on that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, and just to share, I've told folks about the other project I was working on, and so I'm like onto this one, and this is, and people have different. There's like the ranking system stuff I've heard about. It's different projects going on, and so going forward right now, that's the thing that I'm very passionate about. So that's that.
Great. We have about 5 minutes left. I don't know if anyone has any closing comments. Nope. So, yes, Daniel, we expect to see your homework assignment completed sometime in the next 10 years. I'll give you that deadline.
Also, we all took on homework, right? We're all going to do the mission and vision for Togethertec.
Everyone else, right.
And do we want to share them with each other before the meeting, or do we just want to bring them to the meeting next week?
I'll just say I don't know why, but this link isn't working for me. So
I mean, like even when you copy and paste it?
Yeah, it doesn't even say this doc isn't shared with you. It just says this site can't be reached. Oh, you know why? Okay, it's because I'm on a secured site, that secured network. It'll probably work something. Okay.
Yeah.
That's why.
I don't know. I guess I could go either way on that. It'd be nice to like see what each other's doing and riff on it during the week. So yeah, I guess we could share on this post in the Facebook the link to our, if everyone's okay. I mean, I'll be doing mine in Google Docs, and I'll share it with comments open but not editable, so I don't have to worry about did someone accidentally type something. Yeah, and we'll just see how it goes, and if you don't want to, that's fine, and we'll go through each section next week and see what people think.
Like per usual, I'm gonna have to re-Google what a mission and vision are, because every time I'm like, which one's which is this? What is the way to do this? But that's part of it.
I kind of finally memorized it, that the vision is what it's going to look like in the future. The mission is how you get there. Although, kind of think of it, actually how you get there is strategy. So I may have to look them up again.
Yeah, I think the mission is kind of why.
Yeah, right.
The big why. And the vision is the 5-year.
The mission is going to change over time. The mission will be a common thread for a long time.
So we're all in agreement to become billionaires, right? That's the mission.
Why else are we doing this?
Make $1 million.
$1 billion.
$1 billion.
Come on, million's barely anything anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Chump change.
$1 billion or nothing.
Austin Powers was right.
Yeah.
I have to say, this whole MLM idea that I'm coming up with, and the like objections in the game B space of like, I don't know, I don't want to make 120. Like it's like the opposite objections to every other MLM. Like I love this community.
You're offering them too much money?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's like, well, how do we spread this out more? How do we like I love it. I love it.
Did you ever say, is that Canadian dollars?
No, and that's part of what we'll figure out is I do think it's almost based on where you're out of, that you pay 25 Australian, 25 US, 25, but it has to be one on the other end.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's too many currencies. But we'll figure that out together when there's 100 of us or 1,000 of us or whichever.
Okay.
All right. Are we ending the broadcast? And we'll see everyone next week.